Thank you for joining us for another special episode of the Clever Dummies podcast. I'm Lachie, as always, joined by Aneeqe. How you going today, brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Just off here things.
Yeah.
But, now we are up.
Yeah, mate. Just like the old days, mate. We got to tame the beast before we deliver it to the people. Otherwise, that we could get into serious strife. So it's it's good to see nothing's changed anyway. And I guess before we get into the podcast, mate, just to go through some formalities. Of course, we've got a brand spanking new theme for the show, a new picture, cover photo, if you like, on all our socials, then also a brand new website as well, cleverdummies.com. Is it cleverdummiespodcast.com?
No, it's the cleverdummiespodcast.com.
The Clever Dummies Podcast. There you go. Can't even get that right. The cleverdummiespodcast.com. Check out our show list. As we said, mate, brand new display photo there. Background. It really pops on Spotify. And of course, if you're listening to us on Spotify, thank you. If you're on Apple Podcast, even better. Stitcher. Hopefully
Google
we haven't made it to RedTube yet, but maybe one day that could do it.
We're up on Google Podcast.
Yeah, that's it. Google Podcast as well. So, mate, what's been happening in your world?
Look, not much. Just working away, chipping away on things as per usual, and just trying to keep my life together in this COVID-19 normal, or as the people like to call it.
The new normal way. Unprecedented is a word I've heard a few times, mate. Unprecedented. It's funny because you want to go through like your daily routine, but it's a different world, man. And like you're balls deep into it, obviously in Victoria, as we spoke about last time, and you're trying to run a business too. So like you've got it all going off, but mate, it's how we deal when the fire's going on that proves our fucking how hard we want it, eh? So it's going to become easy, man. It's like a rubber band, bro. It's going to bounce back, and when it bounces back, that's what we got to be ready for, eh?
Well, that's exactly right. I think it's going to be a little bit weird when it does bounce back. I mean, I'm an optimist, so I will say that things are going to bounce back. I'm sure there are some people saying that things will never be the same, which, here and there I could agree with as well. But, for the optimist in me, I hope that things will go back to the way they used to be, if not better, because I hope that COVID-19 has taught us at that point things that we never knew about ourselves and community and society, which it did. I think, I truly do think it taught us a lot about the society, about ourselves, not to mention all the Karens running around, picking fights with the staff of Bunnings.
Yeah, the spotlight's been put on them, hasn't it? Some of the stuff we were talking about when we first did our first got the show going at the start of the year, like these things we were talking about, like advancements in technologies, businesses needing to be able to adapt, people needing to be able to adapt, and dealing with stress and change. Like it all came on us at once, so we were there at least hoping to brace for it. But it's just funny, man. Like it's one of those things we're going to have to look back on and try to go, try to have fond memories of it. And going to have heaps of COVID's going to be, the word that's going to be the next banned word, bro, once this blows over. And I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day, bro. Nothing too crazy popping off down in Melbourne, mate.
Cases have jumped up. I think since our last podcast, there was a day recorded of 700 something cases, and then there was yesterday was 600 something. So we're really jumping up. We're clipping that 1,000 mark almost. So it's pretty nuts. It's pretty crazy. A little bit scary as well. I can see why people would be really fearful right now, because things are pretty scary, especially when you take into account how many people are actually dying, which is scary. And then there's also that fact that there's people out there who are treating the whole situation as a joke and an opportunity to get some attention and just to get some heads on, just to get some eyes on them. And, of course, then there's the media who would just do anything to get some eyes on themselves, So there's so much of that going on. So it's truly, truly an interesting time. I don't know if you are keeping up, if you follow Trump on Twitter, but he recently retweeted a video of this doctor. I'm not sure if she's telling the truth or if she's not telling the truth, and she claims to have found the cure for coronavirus, and she's really confused how no one would take her up on it. And Trump went ahead and retweeted that, which is the full
video.
Yeah.
He's I don't use Twitter a lot, but would say at least once a week I'm searching his name with Twitter followed by it, because this is something's always popping off. He gets into it, man. Like, that's one thing that you definitely can say about him is he's himself. He's not this fake politician. He's not very good at anything else, but at least we can give him maybe a little bit of props.
One makes me, I was talking to
that video quickly. I watched it the other day as well, and then I watched.
That's one that I sent to you.
Yeah, that's right. And then I can't remember his name. Wish I did, but he's a doctor, a really well spoken dude on YouTube, and he talks a lot about nutrition. That's how I found out about him. But he spoke about it, so he watched the video and commented on it, and he's obviously. He's all for research, and the way he broke it down is like he loves the passion that the lady has. He loves that she cares so much about her patients that, and it's good to hear that no one's dying, but she's refuting scientific research in a lot of ways, because hydrochloroxide, chlorine, something like that has been looked at a fair bit. What I like her speaking about is the zinc and I can't remember the other thing on top of it. I don't know how much research has been done into that, so that could be interesting for the future. But hydroxychloroquine, I can't remember how to pronounce it. The people sort of started to hear about that when Donald Trump first spoke about it, and then some Gumbies in the Midwest drank a whole bunch of it because it said chlorine on their bloody pool mixer, and they died. And that's how I heard about it. But it's definitely not the craziest thing he's done, man. Like, that's so tame. Like, you've got to go through. You can't have people when you're like that. You can't have someone. You've got to have someone looking over your Twitter but he just doesn't give a fuck. So,
I mean, as a president of one of the largest countries,
most influential person.
Yeah, most influential, and then he's just doing that kind of shit, like it's nothing. He's doing it. He reminds me of girls in our, your 10 girls posting on Facebook, just watching a movie. I can't believe this person just said that. Thanks for live Facebook status updating us on your movie. It's really fascinating how that video spread, and obviously. I don't know what the situation is, and I'm sure right now the conspiracists are jumping up and down, and this is their gold mine. They've just struck gold. They're jumping up and down, and they're very excited because they have just found something they like, something to talk about.
Yeah, it's the same as with Trump when he first got into office. Like, that's when it really ramped up again. Most of the stuff, like the biggest one that I was still hearing about was obviously 9/11, but it had been so long, and the people, they just would just cling on to anything. What else has there been? Remember, they were talking about fake stuff going into the sky to help it rain and all this sort of thing. So I think the vaccine will be the next one. So keep your ears out for a vaccine, mate. They're not going to be happy about that.
Well, 100%. I mean, the vaccinators are already out there. Anti-vaxxers are at full blast.
Yeah,
they're jumping up and down. They're like,
no jab, no play, mate, please.
No
Is it talking about bodybuilding or what is it? I don't know.
It's a whole scenario that's actually pretty crazy, and not it's a brilliant way to get into today's topic. How people are really taking this whole situation.
Sorry to cut you off, bro. Your mic is sort of cutting in and out through the earphones, like it's sort of popping a bit. And
yeah, that makes sense. It's because I have people calling me.
Okay, yeah. So it's cutting in and out. Yeah, yeah. We can easily edit this.
Okay. Yeah. So absolutely agreed there. But I think there's been a lot happening, and this is a nice way to get into our topic today, which is the whole impact of coronavirus that it has had on the world. And I want to look at it from few perspectives. And like I said before, I really want to take like this new outlook on our podcast and start talking about how social influence is working and what people are doing, and really start looking and debunking that kind of situations as well. So the one that I wanted to talk about, which is just coming off that, then the vaccine is going to be the next one. There's been so many companies who've been claiming that they have come up with a vaccine, which is really funny because there's one particular American pharmaceutical company who claimed, and in fact spoke to Trump and went on live air, said that they had come up with the vaccine. I don't know if you heard about that one. And and they said they had come up with a
few weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, and they said they came up with a vaccine, and what ended up happening was their stocks went up, and And then media reported on it. They jumped on like this, and they were like, they have finally made progress on this coronavirus vaccine, and without reporting any of the details. Turns out they were saying, yeah, we can come up with an antivirus. It's only going to take about 3 to 4 years. And they forgot to mention that part. And everyone was like, this is great progress. Their stocks went right up, and people are buying their stocks because it became about money making, right? And I was wondering, and I was thinking about it. This is what I said to you. I think today's topic, we can talk about how there's been people who've been benefiting out of this global catastrophe, right, per se, because there's been people who've been benefiting at like a very high end while everyone else is suffering.
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those people who is saying that, Netflix shouldn't make money, nor should Amazon. I'm fine with those people making money. I'm talking about the people who are directly benefiting from coronavirus. For example, those pharmaceutical companies, and by releasing those media releases saying they have found the vaccine, and then coming back saying they don't have the vaccine, or at least they don't have the vaccine for another X amount of years. I think that's kind of very sad. And then you have the media who just jumps on anything under the sun just to get more eyes on their channels or more clicks on their website without any sort of education or any proper journalism done. So that's a whole situation.
It's just like scientific research too. Real journalism has to be formulated upon a large collection of data and speaking to a lot of different people and that sort of thing. But when the business model is what it is now, as we've spoken about many times, that's where that shit comes in. I guess I was so immersed in it, but when I first heard about this, and I should have thought about it before, I just didn't think about it, but people always capitalize on it. There's an Instagram account I follow. It's just called BioLane, so BIO Lane, LAYNE. The guy's name is Lane Norton. He has a PhD in nutrition, competitive bodybuilder, super smart dude, and he breaks down a lot of nutrition videos online of people, PTs coming out and saying 6-week abs and do all this sort of thing. And the first one I saw was from this really popular account. I can't remember what it's called. He's very heavy into keto, and he has his main video is it's like Greek Olympus body or something like that, and he has like this massive mansion, and he's super shredded. He's got long hair. I can't remember what his name is, but
I know what you're talking about. Keto body.
Yeah, Keto body. As simple as that. Yeah, Kino, Kino, Kino. Yeah, that's right. Look at his page now, man. You see he's got no substance. Anyway, that's definitely another story for another day. But yeah, he came out and said all these people dying because they're overweight and obese. Get on the keto, lose your, their insulin's too high. Lose your insulin, lose your liver, protect your liver, and you're going to be okay. So straight away he's capitalized on it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, obviously he's going to do it because he's an idiot and he just sells out at whatever's going to pay him money. But then I thought about how many different industries are based off that. And you saw it I guess the most famous example in Australia was obviously the news report. Real journalism was done on people who obviously through a connection in China were buying a lot of baby formula, buying a lot of toilet paper, a lot of really essential items that for a period of time we had shortages and limitedness in, which was almost crazy to think about. We spoke about that as well. It's just the worst of the worst. And then I thought, man, these people have done all that. They've gone and they've shipped it not just directly out of Australia where we need it, but they've sent it to the place where this damn thing started. And obviously a mask that's made for 30 cents in China, more often than not, probably made over there. It's sold for a ridiculous amount of money now. And I just go, there should be should there be laws on it? I guess you have creative freedom in a lot of examples, but it's just a kind of a bit of a glimpse into the worst type of humanity sometimes, isn't it? It just opens your eyes when it hits you in the face like that sometimes. It gets my blood boiling, that's for sure.
It's really fascinating. What you said is completely true. The fact that there is no law to sort of hold media, and particularly, what's the name for it? It's called old school media. No, there's a name for it. I always mention the name. I keep forgetting the name for what do you call the news media? The broadcasting model.
Yeah, traditional.
Traditional media or mass media. That's what it's called.
Mass media.
Mass media. So one of the problems with mass media is because the way they're reporting, they had laws, and we remember learning this in broadcasting media law and stuff, and how much we could tell and what we could say and what we couldn't. But when they started going online, that's when the lines started to blur. All of a sudden, they could say so many more things that weren't particularly true, and they're not really adhered by any particular law on the internet.
There's no governing body. There's not a fair trade or anything like that.
Yeah. And on following that, on top of that, the internet has that. Internet has this particular personality on blowing up things that are not necessarily have a positive impact. So most of the time, if you see what's blowing up on the internet, it's always something negative. Because people like jumping up and down about things that are wrong with the world.
Yeah,
and
cancel culture is a real thing right now. Ellen DeGeneres is in the crosshairs right now, brother, if you've been hearing about that.
The cancel culture is a whole nother problem. I mean, that's a topic for a whole nother episode. But just want to quickly touch on that. There was one of the comedians that got cancelled, Australian comedian that got cancelled, and I was quite annoyed by it because I actually really liked his stuff. And they were saying, well, he had he put on a black face and whatnot.
I know Jimmy Fallon is one of those guys. Was it Jim Jeffries maybe?
No, Jim Jeffries always he's been way over.
True. That's the beautiful thing about guys like him and like Adam Sandler. Like you can't touch him because he's 20 years ago, bro. You're 20 years ago.
He's 20 years ago. He's so far from the cancel culture that the cancel culture is like, well, he's already cancelled on everything else. So what are you canceling from? It's the same thing with Bill Burr. That he's another guy. Bill Burr. He's I don't know if you heard much of his stuff. Yeah. He's a very controversial.
I've heard his specials on Netflix a little bit, and I've listened to a little bit of his podcast he does now with Bert Kreischer. I think it's called just Bill and Burr or something. But he's exactly right. He's just so true to himself. I remember seeing clips of him in the 90s where he would go on like morning breakfast television and he was talking about religion, and they would actually, it's a really good example. It might have been maybe mid-2000s, and the lady asked him, "Oh, you sort of talk shit about God, or you talk shit about religion in your thing, like why is that?" And then he's like, well, I have a 60-minute set. I tell 2 jokes on religion. If you really want to go down that rabbit hole, we can open up the rabbit hole and talk about fucking the Catholic Church and everything else. But anyway, I sort of again went down the rabbit hole there. But that's kind of the strategy, right? If you're going to be that person, like even Isaac Butterfield, he's a great example in an Australian sense too. He's constantly on the front lines for us fucking soldiers and bloody trying to put away that sort of thing. So I don't know, like it's that's another podcast for another day, I think. Yeah,
that's a whole other podcast. I mean, I appreciate Isaac Butterfield. Love what he's doing. I think it's quite funny. He's brilliant. But at the same time, sometimes I have seen him get too far as well.
Yeah.
But then I think I'm a fan. I would say I'm a fan. I mean,
that's part of comedy, bro. There's no boundaries to it, man. Like as long as you're not an absolute dick about it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And he's a comedian. What you got to remember that he's a comedian. The funny thing is that we're canceling all these people who are comedians, yet we are not really batting an eye out on people who are not particularly comedian and still jumping up and down and doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. Whether they be in the public eye or whether they are politicians or fucking media per se. And, we're not really holding them accountable.
To any standard at all.
Yeah, and so it's kind of a double standard, which actually makes me wonder, is a lot of that actually drive by the media, is the agenda that's pushed by the media? Because if you really think about the cancel culture, you look at who is really safeguarded from the cancel culture. It's the once again, the network TVs and all this stuff.
That 1% of the 1%.
Yeah, the 1% of the 1%. And despite the fact that how all the big movement happening in particularly the entertainment industry in regards to Me Too movement, that was fantastic, but it didn't really do a lot, if that makes sense.
For society, it somewhat cleaned out a corrupt and dirty industry, but its effects on society are still seem to be reasoned with, I guess, or we're still yet to really see real change, right? As well.
So I hope. I hope we see change on that. But,
definitely a shift, even if you go back 10 or 15 years, like gay marriage was only a few years ago, but I think that was 2017 in Australia. Like that's like such a foreign concept. Like 2017, it's like, man, that's 3 years. Like
it's absolutely it's absolutely brilliant. Like you think about, I guess there's definitely progress. I just wonder how much of it is natural progress of humankind and how much of it is making a difference because we are trying to push for this change.
Well, technology has accelerated so much, hasn't it? Like it's definitely no surprise that we're advancing like the way we are.
Well, that's exactly right. Being able to talk to so many people all of a sudden makes a difference, and being able to push those causes. And the latest example of that is the push with the whole push towards global warming started from that little girl, Greta. I think that's her name.
Greta Thunberg or something.
Yeah, Greta Thunberg. Yep. I mean, obviously, very smart parents. Props to little girl for being the face of it, but very smart parents.
Yep. They raised an intelligent kid, for sure.
Well, raised an intelligent kid, and obviously very smart business people as well, who know how to market the agenda, and which is, I mean, if you know how to do that, and if you're going to
not sure what it's going to do for her self-esteem in a few years, though, to give someone, even though I loved her message, to give someone that sort, and I guess that's how ruthless the internet can be, but to give someone that sort of platform, and it's I don't know. I don't know about that situation.
And then it takes it away. The internet takes it away. Internet doesn't care. It dumps you in a day.
Yeah, it's undefeated, bro. As they say.
It's a beast, It may give you the fame. It gives you, put you on the top of the fame food chain, and then the next day rip you down to absolute nowhere. Then one day you're Britney Spears from 2000s, and the next day you're Britney Spears from 2007.
Yeah, that's right. Same can be even said Justin Bieber, obviously Kanye West, like Kim Kardashian. There's so many examples of people that have and Justin Bieber's was really interesting because he's only slightly older than us, and it came around the time that we were his age. Like I think he's born in 94, so we were in year 8 and year 9, and he was really popping off. And so we kind of got to see that from our, I guess, first-hand experience being, of that age and of that era. And to see what he's doing with himself now is really cool. But he went through some deep waters. So that's the only problem with the cancel. There's so many problems with it, but that's the main thing, man. Like if someone does something bad enough to say, okay, you can't be working for this company anymore, I don't want you as a representative, I totally understand. But we got to just be careful ruining people's careers. We got to be careful doing that sort of thing because, like, if someone does do a blackface when they were a teenager and they're 40 years old now, and society at that time in history wasn't so it wasn't such an issue, for better or for worse, and people were doing it very consistently on television and that sort of thing. So I'm still very, even though some of the things even about Ellen that I've heard are not good, but at the same time, like, should she really lose her job? Like, I think if you live in a world like that, man, that's dangerous, and that's maybe what COVID has brought on, and maybe that advancement in maybe COVID sped that sort of thing up. I mean, cancel culture has existed for a while, but it's it's starting to get nasty now, which it always has been.
I don't think it's fair. I don't like cancel culture in that sense because I remember Kevin Hart got sacked from the global, what was it called, Academy Awards?
The Emmys or the Oscars. Yeah.
I think it was Oscars, Academy Awards. I was very happy about that. The reason being, when he said something, back then he was a completely different person. Just like how in Australia, gay marriage only became legal, 2017. Before that, now it's just normal. And
he's also a comedian, and he was also saying it in a certain context, and he said it at a certain period of time, and that it was certainly not meant to cause offense. Obviously, that doesn't matter. If you say something, you have to live up to it, and he apologized. But then the situation with that one too is they kept wanting him to apologize, and they're like, he talked about it personally, like, this opportunity to host the Oscars, that's what I dreamt about as a kid. Like, this isn't just a career aspiration. This is like what me and my grandma can share an experience over this, because we used to watch this together. And then that happened, and I'm like, fuck this. I mean, that's why they were the lowest ratings ever this year, because people were just like, no, this is nonsense. Bring back Ricky Gervais, I say.
Yeah,
he's the best, bro. He's another guy that you could throw in with, like, the likes of Jim Jeffries and the Bill Burr's old mate. And he's literally made a film career of himself. He just directs his own movies and produces them now, and he's killing
gold, right? And the thing is, the cancel culture is, when you're that kind of person, the cancel culture can't really touch you, because you have literally created a whole industry around you. So
Yeah, and
really.
I reckon you're being a good person a vast majority of the time as well. If someone's a dick, you'll know they're a dick. If someone's a good person, we're all human beings. You can cut them some slack. That's what's so dangerous about the cancel culture. But yeah, again, I'm just rehashing what I said before.
100%. I actually had a theory the other day, and I was talking to one of my housemates, and I was saying, "Hey, so a few years ago at a Halloween party, I painted my face as white as a joke.
I remember that.
Right? Right? And I was saying, okay, does that mean that was racial appropriation, the cultural appropriation? Because I dressed,
evening the playing field,
right? I was evening the play. I dressed up as, I painted my face white face. So isn't that racist? And they're like, no, it's not racist because you're punching up. I'm like, motherfucker, so you're being racist by telling me that I'm punching up. No, it should be racist if you're painting my face white. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? Just one of my housemates said,
he was joking, right? Yeah, he didn't think it through.
Yeah, I know. He was joking. But,
good.
But, so, but
it's pretty funny.
In society and the cancel culture, it's okay to paint your face white. My problem is, why is it okay?
Yeah.
If it's not okay for a white person to paint their face black because blackface, why is it okay for me to paint my face white and dress up as a Joker? Because that should be cultural appropriation. But then if you say that if it's performance and cultural appropriation doesn't apply because I'm punching up, that means you're saying that I am suppressed, and I'm saying I'm not. That means you are being racist. So I feel like we need to even the playing field there. So if a black person, if I'm racist, I should be cancelled. Same thing with other way around.
That's the old adage, man. It's what Martin Luther King said. We shouldn't be judged by the color of our skin, but the character of our heart. And I guess to play not devil's advocate, but to provide a different perspective to that one, you can obviously discuss the history, the long-winded history of oppression for the African American community in particular, where a lot of where Hollywood is based and a lot of censors within that culture. So that's the big example that we all kind of hear of. And they had hundreds of years of slavery, so you can say, hey, we can do it the other way around because we didn't go through that. And I understand that too, but at the end of the day, equality is equality, and to be equal, you have to treat each other equal. So if you do something, and even if you're having a laugh, if people find that offensive, well, then just don't do it. It's got to work both sides, doesn't it?
That's exactly right.
It sucks that we even have to distinguish it, man. But at the same time, man, I haven't. It's a lot of people still need to, because you do still talk to a lot of people who they might say jokes, and I'm not saying this about your housemate. He's a good dude from what you told me, but I've known people who I liked or knew of anyway, and then they said something as a joke in a very light and non-hearted way. But I'm like, oh, for you to say that, so it's definitely a real thing. But I would never be a racism denier. That's no chance. But we just have to be smarter about our resolution. It can't just be, okay, we have to suppress these people now and bring these people up. It doesn't work like that, because then you're just history repeating itself. We can bring these people up without bringing other people down. Education is a beautiful way to level the playing fields,
Education is the way to go.
Education.
Now, education.
That's a full stop on that fucking little segment there, mate. That was well done.
That's exactly right. Education.
Eventually, you throw shit at the wall long enough, mate, something sticks.
Something stinks. Now, quickly bringing back to the coronavirus situation. Now, talking about, obviously, we know that coronavirus started in China, and let's talk about what China has been doing. What it's been busy doing, right?
China.
So obviously, I understand that this is this is dangerous territory, because China controls a lot.
Yeah, but there's a lot of Chinese people out there too, mate. So tread lightly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Nothing against Chinese people, right? I like Chinese people, right? There's no racism there, but it's more so their government structure that I have things against.
Most definitely.
So they've got, while the rest of the world has been suffering because coronavirus started in China, and then they basically hid it from the entire world.
Just to quickly chip in, I'll be 10 seconds. I noticed when I was talking about, not putting down China, but when I was saying things negatively against China, it felt like I was treading on waters that maybe is a bit dangerous. I'm trying to put everyone together, but we have to be clear that when we're talking shit about China, we're talking about their leaders and their the way they live, like the way they structure their politics, not people. I just want to make that clear for sure.
Oh, 100%. Nothing against Chinese people are, it's really hard to differentiate between that. But then again, it's like how we talk shit about Trump, we don't talk shit about Americans.
That's
but
right.
then again, some Americans are complete dickheads and idiots. So we can talk shit about those people because especially the ones who say, "This is America. Why can't I have guns?" Shut the fuck up. Anyway, so that's a whole other.
That's definitely another one. Yeah,
that's another one, right? But talking about China, right? Not talking about Chinese people, talking about Chinese government and how the structure works. Yeah, so they hid it from the rest of the world, and because China is so closed off, and there were some people who were disappearing. There were literally doctors who disappeared. There were people who were whistleblowers disappeared, and some people, all of a sudden commit suicide. So there's
have you heard of WeChat before?
Yes.
They had, and I don't know how much of a coincidence this is, they had over 20 million active users stop using their accounts, sort of around February. Over 20 million active users, yeah. So that could be just deleting all accounts, I'm sure, but there's no way the numbers are what they are. Like, I don't want to get into the conspiracy game, but that's one that I would dig for sure. There's no way there's been 3,000 or 4,000 deaths. Like this, that's just no way.
100%. I mean, let's look at the coronavirus cases in China. What we see on the government.
Yeah, the World Health Organization, WHO, will have usually they've got it all laid out pretty well, the different countries and regions and that. Check on India too. I know they weren't doing too good not so long ago. I haven't seen their numbers for a while.
So, confirmed cases of China total 84,000, 78,000 of them who recovered, only 4,634 deaths, they only had 127 new cases. So from what it seems like, given the China's population, because now you got to remember that whole curve, everyone's saying flatten the curve, is actually a pretty poor statement or pretty poor way to show what the number of the cases, because you got to remember that flatten the curve. Yeah, it's not really taking into account the amount of people per capita. It's only going off how many cases that's coming up. So all of a sudden, where it seems like Australia's curve is really high, Australia's curve is pretty low, or China's curve is low, because even though they have first of all, their curve is really low, and we're not taking into account the fact that when you have 127 cases per population that China has, that's like nothing. That's
problem solved, bro. What are you guys doing? That's problem solved. We're not hearing nothing about resolutions.
Yeah, that's below 1%. Melbourne has just to put that in perspective. Melbourne has 6 million people, and I'm pretty sure China has upwards of 1 billion people.
Yeah, Melbourne's got like 10,000 cases or something like that, right? Yeah,
Melbourne's got. Well, today Melbourne had 600 cases. And China had 127. The whole country had 127 cases. Yeah. Just put in perspective, that's a whole nother round. Like, they've solved the problem. They've got it over done with. What makes me wonder what makes me question the whole situation is the fact that how did this all virus start? And particularly in this place, China, where everyone is so squeezed together and the population is humongous. And if the virus is spreading so crazily up here in Melbourne or anywhere in Australia and everywhere else, how did they get over the problem so quick? So that's what makes me wonder, maybe they did engineer the virus, because now that they've solved the problem while everyone else is suffering and their economies are taking the dive, China is busy working. While everyone's focus was away, they took over Hong Kong and put in new laws in place. And I can't remember exactly what law it was, but I remember reading about it. It was something to do with that they can prosecute any person who is originated from Hong Kong, doesn't matter where they are, doesn't matter where that's the citizen of. So that's crazy. So if I was a person whose parents was from Hong Kong and I live in Australia, I don't know exact law, so don't quote me on it, but it seems like they can prosecute me, despite the fact that I'm an Australian citizen.
Yeah. And that's just insane, isn't it? And that's kind of like probably as deep, and that's kind of the conspiracy is the easy word to use, but it's not a conspiracy. And I guess that's the angle that people are going to want to look at once we've kind of passed this, because it's really hard to invest a lot of time and money and resources into the issue of what the situation that's going on with China, how easily they've recovered from it and everything else. While you're going through it, you've got to obviously figure it out yourself. But I think that's something we're really going to look back on, and I'm sure there's going to be some. You just hope it's nothing catastrophic, but there's going to be some real changes to the world, particularly politically. And you can already see it a little bit with how easy it is to get certain products in and out of China and Australia. Like, already it's already starting to happen. So they're already starting to withdraw. Australia became a part of that. Not sure. I wouldn't say a legal proceeding, but it's a government investigation into the handling of it in China. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But undoubtedly, it's shady as. Do you think it's more? What's your heart tell you about it? Do you think it was genetically engineered over there? Do you think they fiddled around with it more than they're letting on?
I think there's definitely something more going on in China, because if there's a fact that China is not even testing, not even bothering, that's pretty inhumane, right, to their own people, right? If China is not even testing and they've still got the problem, that's pretty inhumane. But something tells me there's more to the story, and there has to be, because how could a country like China, who is doing exactly what they're doing and have 127 cases in a day in such a huge population, where per country like Melbourne, which is a country like Australia and a place like Melbourne is struggling. So it really makes you wonder. And China doesn't have the resources we have.
No,
they do in a weird way, but they don't. They don't have the scale of resources. It's because, let me put it this way: China is doing exactly what America was doing 20 years ago, but they're doing it better because they know they've learned from America's mistakes.
Yeah, so they're not putting it out there. They're not what the US took pride in, almost vocalizing their control and their power. Where China's definitely not doing that.
So they're playing a whole nother game, which is problematic, because right now the whole world is suffering. So it just makes me wonder: is it possible that they could have orchestrated it all? So that's definitely a question. I mean, I hate to be the conspiracist, but it just makes you wonder. It's a question. It's a proposed question that, do you think that it's possible that China had something to do with the creation of coronavirus? Because now that I look at what China is doing now, based on what the rest of the world is going through, I mean, you look at America, man, they're so far gone. I mean, they had, let me look up the cases in America right now.
They've obviously very much cleared to be the highest in the world now. That's why I was curious to see if India had that sort of escalated to that level. But even case by case, I think they've got well over 1 million now. And Florida alone and California alone have several 100,000.
United States has got 4.58 million cases.
Yeah.
And they're having, roughly averaging at 68,000 cases, 65,000 cases a day.
Yeah.
And, they've got 154,000 deaths.
I'd be interested to see how many tests they've done. There's
let's have a look at that.
I remember how long ago was it? I was listening to someone, I can't remember his name, on Rogan's podcast, and they looked at a couple of jails in the US, and they saw that the percentage of inmates that had it at a couple of certain jails near hotspot areas or states were really high. So they're thinking, with the amount of people that are getting in that sort of situation, the estimates of how many people would actually have it would have to be tenfold. You'd imagine the amount of people that just don't want to get tested or don't need to get tested or just haven't. Like, you'd think that number would have to be a lot higher.
Well, that's exactly right. And it just makes you wonder how many more people have it, because at the rate of which this is spreading, the point of which the whole situation is.
Go ahead. Sorry. It's like anything, like when I look at the China situation, like any situation, you have to be rational about it. If you think about like a movie, the difference between a good and a bad movie is the ones that can piece things together. And if there's a hole missing, if there's a plot hole missing, well, then the movie's going to be shit. It's the same with, if you look at this situation with China, like, things just don't add up, man. Like, there's gaps. Like, it just makes you wonder. It turns you into a bit of a conspiracy theorist because of that. Like, it doesn't add up.
Well, that's exactly right. And, I know a lot of Australians are pointing fingers at the Australian government. I mean, look, most governments are doing the best they can, because they're not really Much as I want to think that most governments are trying to stay away from political agendas, much as it's hard, it's almost impossible not to. It's almost impossible to do that, but I feel like they're trying their best. And because keep in mind, most of these government or political leaders, their kids live in the same country, so
Yeah,
you got to remember that they're not really. I like to think most people aren't evil. I think most people are just not, most people are just dumb. That's probably a fact.
It's like,
But I think
is it most people aren't evil, but do those people gravitate towards politics? Like, is there a higher percentage than the regular population in something like politics?
That's exactly right. I mean, I think it makes sense. Often people who might be, may have a more of a devious personality, manipulative personality may lean towards such roles in power and may seek out more power. I guess that would make sense. So just looking at some of the stats. So you've got US at, like I said, 4.6 million cases, total death at 155K. You've got total recovered, which is pretty good, active cases. Total tests done in America is at 57 million tests.
Okay, so that's 57 million out of, how many did he say? 4.5 that got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
I mean, that's still pretty insane.
Yeah, most definitely. So you're just trying to average that across the country. So if there's 350 million people that live in the US, you could guess anywhere from 35 to 50 million people that have it, but you actually wouldn't. Yes. That's not scientific. That's just theoretical. Yep.
The best way to look at it is death per million people. So death per million people is, for US, is 469 people per million people.
And that's where that flawed system is with the curve, because it doesn't take into consideration the total amount of. And I guess if you live in certain states, I'm sure it's not just a country thing. Like, that's such a big country, and unlike Australia, where size-wise we're similar, they've got so many different little hotspots, and obviously big cities, but also little cities as well. Like, they've got for 50 states, they've got 150,000 little places. So there's so many more chances. You're not going to get COVID on Uluru, I don't think, but you might be.
That's exactly right.
Maybe that's the plan for the future.
Just to add on that, I think it's important to keep in mind that American population is undereducated as well.
Yeah.
So they're not very savvy. Whether Australia has a much more educated population, and I don't necessarily mean how many people per capita have completed high school. I just mean they've got, dare I say, Australian people just have more common sense. It's just because America had really good luck in the earlier years. So their people didn't really need to use common sense or hard work per se.
They just had smart people, savages too, man. They weren't afraid to. People talk about how bad the English monarchy were and some of the things they did, but the US, I mean, they had civil war in their own country for a reason. Like, they were just, venomous. They just didn't care.
Well, that's exactly right. So America has had a few good years, had some golden years behind it, which is why American population is probably not that savvy. That's why you see all the Karens coming out of America.
Exactly. Even think about like the education system over here, man. Like, if you almost absolutely have to go to year 10. If you don't, either you're in a situation where you live in a housing situation where you've had to be removed from your parents, or you're really not doing the best, or there's some few examples of people that pursue something at that age, but you have to go to year 10 at least before you can leave. Over there, I don't think that's the case. I don't think there's as much. I mean, there's obviously a lot more people too, but I don't think there's the same sort of pressure to be educated, even to a year 10 level, man. Like, it might not seem as much, but you could definitely tell the difference, you know what I mean? So it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, but I think that's got to do a big part of it. It's just, the quality of the education, I'm sure, is the same.
Yeah, and that's right. I do think it's a lot to do with the fact that it has that common sense sort of scenario that's missing American population, because like you think about the whole thing about just not even understanding the gun law thing, They're struggling to understand the whole gun law situation, let alone anything else. So it just makes you realize that where their heads are at. So,
and you obviously know a bit about the Constitution over there too, I'm sure.
Yes.
Like that was,
Yes.
written. I think it's the Second Amendment that all citizens have the right to bear arms. But that's, obviously based on a time where the only way you got stuff done was by physically, going there and threatening someone. Like that, violence was a real frigging issue. Like it was a real thing, and that a lot of their life and a lot of their policies, their rationale was, it's in the amendment, you can't touch it. Well, dude, that was written at a time where it was written with a feather and some ink. Like it's 2020 now, baby. Let's get rolling. And I think that's part of why their rank, like they're really going to come out of this tough more than any other big country. Like this is where that's why China's doing what they're doing, right?
That's exactly right. I think the country that has suffered the most in this whole scenario is by far
it's not even
America.
close. Yeah, and not just physically with the numbers, but in terms of and they obviously had the protests and everything going too, but that's unfortunately almost been put aside just because of just the decline of their overall their population and just their culture. Like it's tough, it's tough.
And you look at once again, you look at the kind of cases that's coming out of there, and look at their lockdown laws and all that stuff. I mean, you look at Australia, and you look at what has our premier done here in Melbourne.
Yeah, we started in March, bro. Our lockdown started in March. We had less than 10,000 cases in the country. They saw a spike. They acted over there. Obviously, the political system is different, but they didn't wait until about the same time. But their coronavirus started spreading 3 months earlier. So, and now Trump's definitely to blame for it too, but now they just can't even get anything passed. Everything in Parliament gets pushed back because there's the Democrats and there's the Republicans. We have the two-party system over here, but there's just so much and that's where that's where most of the bullshit stems from is politics, and so many people are invested in it. And that's almost like filling the void for education in a lot of ways. They weren't taught these things, this common sense. When a politician's saying these things and promising you this and that, and you should kind of know, like, hey, maybe this, you can't really deliver on that because it doesn't work that way. People don't know because they're not educated enough. They didn't go through enough schooling, or they were focusing on the wrong things. That's the problem maybe with Hollywood a little bit. And Hollywood is its own entity, and I don't want to, at the end of the day, man, I love my TV and I love my movies, so I don't want to always be whacking Hollywood. Like they're amazing. Like without them, like there's so many great experiences in life that you can base off that sort of culture. But to base the fabric of their nation off a lot of that sort of thing, it's obviously shows kind of it's a tough lesson for them to learn.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you talk to American people online and they just don't understand. See, but once again, I feel like I'm once again targeting too much people. Necessarily. I may be generalizing here. I don't want to generalize, but I'm just talking about, there are people out there who are America jumping up and down because they have to wear masks. I mean, then again, there's people in Australia doing it. There's everywhere people like that everywhere, but I think there's just probably more in America because the population is bigger. I don't know what the reason is, but it just seems to be the case. Now, moving on from that, I mean, India, it's got 1.64 million cases, and they're averaging at, so they've got 35,000 deaths, and they've got total recovery is pretty good, and their death per million people that's actually not bad. Death per million people is 26.
Okay, I know they were on a bit of a bad trend for a while, so that's good to hear that the numbers have maybe bottomed out, or they're on top of it. They seem to be a country that's a lot more willing to work together than the US, that's for sure.
Well, that's exactly right. But then again, their tests are total test, bro. So their total test is, I mean, not incredible. Their total test is 18 million.
That's nothing. Yeah, that's a very low percentage, isn't it?
So
and how many deaths and cases have not been reported in that situation?
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah. So, I mean, they're still trying. I guess that you got to give it to them. But, then again, they have issues as well.
Yeah. China and India both share a similar sort of structures. They have obviously a very prominent and strong lower class. They have a very prominent and strong upper class, but they don't have that middle class that the US and a lot of English, most of the UK countries, pretty much even Ireland and us over here in New Zealand, so many countries in the world have that middle class that for so many reasons help keep that society and helps separate that divide, and people tend to get along a little bit better. But when you've got such a big gap, and that's where it becomes difficult. Whereas I think in China, obviously communism promotes that. In India, it's just sheerly so many people. It is just too many people, unfortunately. Yeah.
I mean, you in India, obviously hard work is a thing, or you just won the lottery. That's how it is. And the same thing like in Pakistan, that's exactly what it is as well.
Yep.
So talking about, and then moving on from that, you've got Brazil at 2 million
I know
cases.
Brazil struggled. Brazil was like the
Brazil
second
at
worst behind the US, I think.
2.6 million people, 2.6 million cases, second in the second highest number of cases, 91,000 deaths, which is more per. I think that's So that's it's not more than per. Yeah, it's actually below US, but it's below US. It's at 430 deaths per million people, and then they have conducted total 12 million tests. So once again, poor effort on how many tests they've done. But then again, I guess it's all resourcing. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, most definitely.
That's what it comes down to. So look, you look at all these numbers, and now I want to see what number China is at, right? On number of cases
and everything else. Have you had a COVID swab done at all? Have you had a test done at all?
I haven't had it done. I remember.
Do they cost money at all?
No, it doesn't cost money. It doesn't cost money. I was going to get it done. But someone said you only need to get it done. You have to get it done if you have symptoms. Otherwise, they turn you away because they have so many people showing up to get tested.
That's right. And also, if you're asymptomatic, you essentially don't pass the virus down because it's just not a living organism in your body anymore, and that's been shown through multiple studies as well. And that was the big controversy behind keeping kids out of school. They're worried about kids transmitting it, and thankfully, imagine this was a thing that really started. And you never know what can happen. This thing has already started and moved so much, but imagine children were on that sort of list, like. That probably would change a lot of people's attitude too, but that's a good thing about this virus anyway, is that if you are asymptomatic, so it is present in your body, but it's not causing you any harm, then you're probably not going to spread it to anyone else. So that's why they're obviously not just making it. Otherwise, everyone would just get sent one in the mail, I'd imagine. Like there'd be that much supply and demand for it. You'd figure it out, I guess. Maybe, because I know there's a few days. That's the only problem with it still now, is you've got to wait a day or two to find out results. If you get a quick test, that'd probably help a lot more people go and get it done too. If you could find out in 20 minutes, go have a coffee, come back, and then that probably not go have a coffee in case you've got it. But maybe go for a drive-through with a mask. Yeah, go for a walk, isolated walk on the beach. But that's a topic. What are your thoughts on closing beaches? Careful, buddy. Careful.
I might be maybe taking away Australian rights here. I mean, it just doesn't look. I think we should just do what's required to keep each other safe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really shitty. I mean, I would like to be at the gym because I think gyms are essential. I keep saying that because I think gyms are related to mental health. Like, at least for me,
exercise, man. Yeah.
Exercise is massively related to, I guess when you're closing down everything else, like it makes sense to close the gyms down as well. But, I just in New South Wales, in Sydney, they're closing down the 24 hours gyms to only function during staff hours or something like that.
Yeah,
and
so for the first time in human history where churches, so places where people can practice religion, have been closed or temporarily closed, and there hasn't been a direct war from that, a direct conflict. It's happened in the Middle East. It happened throughout history where you took people's right to practice religion freely away, and then things blew up. That happened civil war as well. So that's pretty interesting. And that's because everyone kind of realizes this is a thing that we all just need to sacrifice a little bit on. And my only argument with the beach is, one, you're in the sun. There's been heaps that's been said about COVID not doing as well in the sun. That's not so much of a great argument because you're kind of in the sun everywhere, but you're in the elements, you're in the environments, you're directly on the heat. Anyone who lives or goes on a beach knows how hot the sand can get. That's definitely one. Two is it's a very easy place to socially isolate and be 1.5 meters away from people. It's such a large surface area. And three, it should just be like anywhere else. If you're able to go to the shopping centre, which I know is essential too, I think beaches should be made, should still be allowed to be open, because for me, it's more common sense than anything, man. You can go there and not be near other people. Obviously, then people would have to come in and watch and make sure people aren't together. But at the end of the day, like, I am never going to, and this is kind of, I guess, where my divide will come into it, is I'm not going to let you take away everything. You can never let anyone take away all rights. And you might say it's just a beach, man. The beach is more than just a beach. So that's where I kind of put my foot down a little bit.
No, I agree. I get where you're coming from. My only concern is what if the beaches were originally open, if you remember, but what happened was people just flocked to the beaches.
Yeah, of course, because it's the only thing that's open, right? Yeah, so there's a little bit of a pros and a cons. Yeah.
And that's problematic, and I feel like that's problematic. And I feel like when you say it's okay for only some people, it's never going to be just some people. It's going to be everyone going to the beach because that's the only thing to do. And like I said before in many previous episodes, I feel like a lot of people think that we are very unique. And I feel like I just really believe that all of us are way similar than we actually think. The way
Most
we
definitely,
think,
it's beautiful how close.
We I can assure you, to me and you, well, you and I know because we think alike, because that's why we are friends. But the person next to me doesn't think that different from what I do. We have the same needs, we have the same psychological need. You may think that you're special, but you're not, because I'm special, so you're special, so everyone is special, so that means no one's special. So that's a really interesting way to do it. So that's what I'm saying. So when the beach opens, everyone thinks the same.
And for me also, like, the beach and the gym are not the same thing. If you're going to have levels of restrictions and lockdown, like if you're going to take away being allowed to go to the beach, like a real basic freedom, like walking the street, you've got to show me more than 450 people per million passing away from it. Like that might be harsh, and that might sound crazy. And I don't mean go and open nightclubs, don't get me wrong, but I would be a little more reluctant. We would not want the numbers to get to that stage, but if the numbers did get to that stage because it was found that all these people getting sick and dying from going to the beach, then maybe that's the case. That's a bit of a controversial one, because then it's like, well, hey, we're in the prevention business. We want to stop people getting sick, of course, but you can't. You just have to go through. You have to be a student of history sometimes and go back throughout history and seeing when things have when control has been taken away from the people. It never really goes back. And this is obviously a different example because it's a virus that's killing people across the world. But I think just deep down, like, this kind of one thing that I'm even if I'm a little bit irrational with it, it's kind of like one of those things where I'm pretty. I'm willing to argue most people with it, even if they're more educated than I am. I'm willing to play the common sense card with that one.
No, I totally get where you're coming from.
And it's a mental health thing too, man. Like 100%. Just being able to get out of the house,
Well, that's it. And I think, if you're going for a walk, you should be able to go to the walk for a bit. And I feel like where you live, it probably should be fine. It would have been fine the whole
Bondi
time.
Beach, it's a different story for sure.
Different story. But I feel like if you did that in Sydney, I do feel like that would have been problematic.
Yeah.
In Sydney, per se,
Sydney, bloody Bondi Beach, like the first day they said people don't gather, we don't want to ban it, but we just can't pick. And then the next day, 40,000 people. It's like, you absolute imbeciles.
Well, that's exactly right.
10% of those people would have been there to get their last swim in because they knew it was going to happen. Sure, 90% of people there, dumb as dog shit. Anyway, that's a controversial take.
Talking about controversial. I like controversial topics. Talking about controversial topics, I want to talk about our beautiful Karen here in Melbourne. So the government has said, put on the fucking mask because chances are you will spread less virus if you have a mask on, right? Which is kind of common sense, right? Makes sense. And this lady, and in fact, few people have jumped up and down, have sort of abused police and abused staff at different places and saying, well, they're not going to put on a mask because that's their right as a person to not to wear a mask. Now, I do have a problem with that, is because my problem with that is, what right? Like, what do you? How is that affecting any of your human rights kind of situation? I think if anything, you're the one who is actually should be. In fact, dare I say, I would label them as a terrorist for actually.
Let's not get crazy. I hear what you mean, but let's not get crazy.
But this is a state. Just a
terrorism, right? is blowing some shit up,
Well, I think terrorism is actually something. It was something to.
Oh, this might be white belt terrorism then, eh? Like low level shit. Yeah, good.
Terrorism or whatever it's called.
It's just the terrorism word is so strongly embedded with emotion that it's.
I think the word terrorism comes from terror. It's about
the causing the emotion
of. I'm not exactly sure, but something to do with endangering or threatening social structure or something like that.
Yeah, here we go. I've got it here. So, just on good old fashioned Google, the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. And that's terrorism. That's more of a social meaning than an actual legit meaning of the word. That's not a dictionary
Yeah,
meaning.
that's
That's
right.
more contextual. But yeah, it's causing harm to other people. Which,
So
bro, if you cough on someone's face, man, you're going to get arrested. Like, so I understand the mask thing for sure, for sure.
And I that's what I mean. That's why I think could you like I think that's pretty so they're being pretty dangerous there. So and they're jumping around with my rights and stuff. So that's kind of a whole dodgy situation. Now talking about, I've got a question for you, and actually just want to mention it. I don't know if you heard about three women who snuck into Melbourne and snuck back into Queensland and started the coronavirus there again, and lied to
Oh, really?
the cops, whatnot,
Back road Sally, they call
yeah,
her.
back. So, and now they're facing 5 years, possible five
Yeah,
years jail.
yeah,
What do you think about that?
yeah. So lay it out for me a little bit more detail. But I think I know what you're saying. Like I think I've heard this one. But what happened? What did you do?
So three girls from Brisbane. I think they're from Brisbane. I don't know the complete story because, like how the media doesn't really tell the complete
Nah,
story.
that's
I
right.
guess.
Yeah, you've got to pay
So,
$7 a month to
yeah.
see it. Their
So
broken business model is catching up with them,
that's exactly right.
running
So
out of money.
roughly, I think three girls somehow, for some odd reason, managed to sneak into Melbourne. Don't fucking know why, because why would you come to Melbourne? There's nothing going on. So I mean, Melbourne's a beautiful place. Only come here when there's no coronavirus. Come here, but then when there's no coronavirus. At the moment, there's nothing going on. So they came here
All
and
right, let's name and shame these girls even, eh? So this is the dailymail.co or through news.com.au, so this is not directly off us, but Mrs. Zoe Zazek and a Kylie Stevens. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Continue, sorry. Go ahead.
is that going under anti-discrimination? What is it called? Defamation law?
Maybe, but I just offloaded it to Daily Mail, so it's all good.
Okay.
But no, yeah, those are the two girls. It's been reported on the media, so it's not
Yeah.
a hidden thing anymore. So
they
okay.
they snuck into Melbourne, and
Yep.
I'm not sure what the story is, so don't quote me on the story. But
Yep.
the point is, they were in Melbourne and they
Yep.
caught the coronavirus. They went to Sydney and then snuck into Queensland from Sydney.
Wow.
Some snuck into Brisbane.
Yep.
And they lied to on border security
Yep.
and all that
Just said
stuff.
where they're being and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, where
Yep.
they've
Yep.
been. And now they're facing possible 5-year prison time because they have actually spread the virus to, I think, 2 or 3 people of memory.
Yep. Yep. And how many does that go from there? That's how they start,
That's
isn't
right.
it? So yeah, I saw it a few times. Like I saw the fines, I saw possible jail time. I thought, geez, what are you going to have to just go around and cough in people's faces in the supermarkets to get jail time? Obviously, you would deserve it. But I think this is a situation where, to say to go to jail, I mean, that's hard. Depends exactly what they did. We would obviously have to know more specifics, but I would 100%, this is a criminal act. If you're in a pandemic, if you're going to one state, lying to other people, going back to another state, and you've shown that you're not just going to do it once and maybe you needed to see a relative or you can make some bullshit up, say, sorry, I needed to see this person. No, you've just done it because for the lols, like because you wanted to. So I think, without obviously going into too much details, I think these girls are in some real trouble, especially with bloody Carl Stevanovic on it, the bloody the news host. That's what I saw on the page. So I think that's probably a fine example where these girls they'll probably get shown an example of too. Like that happens in these sort of situations where you threaten, a penalty for a certain thing, and people, particularly in a time like these where there's just so many people affected by it, I think you've got to face some sort of ramifications for sure. Even community service, like you can't just be a slap on the wrist for that one.
Well, they're going to make an example out of them. They would have to because the point is, if you look at it, and this is coming from a Melbourne person who's living in Melbourne, why would you go to a place that's suffering just only to? Why would you go into a quarantine zone? To only to go back to a place like if you're from Brisbane who's just been enjoying life there, why would you why bother? And it's that's pretty problematic. So
just young, immature girls.
Yeah, unless they're from Melbourne, then that changes the story. Then I'm wondering if
That
they'll
says
get
they're
extradited.
Queensland girls, though. So they're Queensland girls. So they left there. Yeah. It says it says they crossed the border twice. So I'd imagine that was Victoria and Queensland twice. Just young dummies. Imagine they vlogged about it. Like, imagine they just pumped it on their social. That wouldn't surprise me.
I think they did.
Yeah,
I think they did.
Yeah.
So talking about vlogging, right? Talking about dumb criminals, right?
Yeah.
So I for some people who are still unfortunate enough to have Snapchat,
they still got their bloody location set on.
Their location. So unfortunate enough to have Snapchat, you would know that on Snapchat you can browse the map and see the hotspot area where activity is going on. So in Victoria, because Victoria is in lockdown, I was just browsing it, and you just saw a whole bunch of people doing a whole bunch of things, and they just have their location turned on and everything for everyone to see, public image, and I was like, well, these guys are a bunch of fucking idiots. And then I continued watching it. There was a guy who, in fact, this particular one, actually, one of my housemates was looking at it. And I was like, what a fucking idiot. This guy had stacks of cash and he's like, side hustle, ! Winky face. I'm like, if you're a drug dealer, why the fuck are you going to post a picture of your stacks of cash, you idiot?
Yeah, and he'd be the same. Yeah, he's the same guy like that would flaunt a watch. Like, he works at bloody Big W, but he's got a brand new BMW, got rings, and I'm sure you can guarantee he's got his fucking location turned on. I'll tell you that much right now.
What a fucking idiot! Like, I mean, what kind of criminal are you? That's
I was actually going to say that. How's the drug business going? What's going on there? Hopefully these good, honest, hardworking people are doing all right, mate. They must be taking a real hit. Actually, drink has gone up. I know alcohol intake in the US has gone up, even though things are closed. I'd imagine it's probably the same over here.
I would say so. I actually think I was thinking about this the other day. I said, did the alcohol business go up or down? And I would say it went down in Australia because despite the fact that people are buying so much alcohol, the mass majority of that big chunk would have been consumed by
people going opinions. Yeah.
So I would feel like it would have gone down.
You'd think so, yeah. You'd think so, and I know in the US, like every service station has a bottle shop. Every gas station, there's a bottle shop everywhere. We have a lot over here. Don't get me wrong, but it's such a commercial business that most of them are liquor lanes that are at shopping centers and those sort of things. So it doesn't surprise me in the US that it's gone up though. And hey, man, these are all things that are contributing to the people passing away. Like it is statistics. It's not a complete blanket statement, but people that have previous morbidities, who have type 2 diabetes, who are obese, who have various ailments, these are the ones that are passing away more regularly. So it's no surprise that, and it probably explains a lot of their issues anyway, just like it would in Australia.
That's exactly right. And I think there's a lot that can be said about that. I think it's important to keep your head up and have that sort of try to aim for the healthy lifestyle. I mean, not that most people.
And you take away exercise. Baby. Oh, now we're getting into deep waters, mate. Now we're getting into deep waters. We're teeing ourselves up.
I think if you're taking away exercise, most people would just work out at home. I guess, but if you're saying don't even go out, no. I mean, if it got really bad, I'd understand. But I don't think it's that bad that you say don't even leave the house.
Yeah. As a person who trains 6 days a week, I can tell you I did one home workout. I did 2 home workouts in 2 months. So, I mean, I took my dogs for a walk. I went out, but actual real workouts where I sat down, music on, I was hitting mitts with my buddy. It might have been 3 times. So I had to still go into the gym. I was lucky enough to have keys and a closed business. I was doing maintenance at the gym and I was still able to go in. That's my only way of getting in. Otherwise, it is difficult to, and this might be something I can sign off with a little bit on my ends. Like, at home workouts don't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be a whole bunch of things you have to do what equipment do I have to get, man? If you get a yoga mat, if you've got a carpet, if you've got some beats and you know how to do a burpee, you know how to do a push-up, you can get some shit done. So, it can be done. We have to get to a stage now where we realize it finally has to friggin' sink in, and I'm talking to myself more than anyone, that this thing is not an overnight sensation. This thing is going to still affect. We're probably not even halfway through this thing, I'd say,
Yeah, that's true.
Do you think because herd immunity would take years. Do you think a vaccine is probably more likely eventually?
I think the vaccine is probably the only way we'll get through this. But then again, how long till everyone is vaccinated, and how the vaccine is going to work? Because there's two ways. They were saying there's two ways the vaccine can go. One, that you get the vaccine and then you don't actually get the coronavirus and you become immune to coronavirus. The other one is so it's immunal virus. Antivirus is called. The other one is that is possible remedy to coronavirus. So if you get the coronavirus and then you get it, and then so you're fine.
It's like a natural immunity, and that's definitely last resort, obviously, because then you're really testing people's immune systems and that sort of thing. Where an actual real, that's a very good point. There's a vaccine that, like the flu, has it in there and it helps you beat it, and then there's a vaccine that is just like an equalizer. That's I haven't thought about that. That's a really good point.
And the problem is, got to remember, with influenza vaccine, I got influenza vaccine, and I actually still did get sick from.
Yeah, most definitely. That's why I get flu shots, man. Like I've just had too many bad experiences with it.
So you still get sick. Despite the fact that you have a vaccine, doesn't mean you won't get sick. It just means most of the time because there's. I think from memory, I know there's different kind of viruses. So you may still get a virus if you have a bad enough attack. But in most cases, the vaccine will work, and you'll.
They're still giving you the virus in most cases as well. So that's the big question: is like how much, if we can figure out a way to minimize it. And I guess that'll be the question: like, when is the economy? When do we need to get things back up and running? And like that would be last case resort. Like, hey, we need to give you this thing. Some people might pass away. Statistics have shown, and we're hoping for our betterment, that most people are going to be okay, but there is a chance. So that's where the world's going to get crazy if it ever gets to that stage. But
the scary part is if you take into account the numbers and run the numbers on Excel.
Yeah,
because
that's right.
You can project based on certain data and whatnot. I mean, don't do it on Excel, but you could probably project what kind of numbers we're talking.
Ballpark, they could estimate for sure.
You could estimate. I'm sure they have.
Especially within the next 12 months, where more than likely, if it is what it is now, most people would have had the test by now, so they'll kind of know how many people have got it, how many people are passing away, and that sort of thing. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
There's another problem with the test. The problem with the test is, if you get the test, let's say if I get the test now and I come out as negative, I count as a person who's been tested, right? And then later on, I may catch it. Catch it.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. With the whole. So that's the challenge that I suppose.
That's why they test. There's two different tests. So there's an antibody test, which is essentially testing for any residuals still left in your body. So if you've had it at one stage, and then there's the test to see if it's active. So there's actually two different types of COVID tests as well. So just because if you have the antibodies, that's really good. That means you've got the immunity to it, so you can actually truck on and keep going. But if you don't have it, well then, bro, you could push the door on the way out and get it. It's really as simple as that. Like literally 10 minutes later, the test becomes null and void, right?
Well, the next question is, how much of the virus is spreading at the test sites?
Yeah, well, that's right. And imagine what that must be like. Like, you think it's going to be stressful doing that. Imagine being in those massive suits and just being. You probably look at people and go, "Yeah, buddy, you've got COVID. You've got COVID. Come right through."
It's a scary time to be alive. Anyway, I'd say let's wrap that, and I think we'll be good, baby. 1 hour, almost the 1 hour 15-minute mark. We are at 1.13.
Yeah, our sweet spot, man. We covered some good shit there. Obviously, we talked a bit about COVID, and we'd rather not, but at the same time, man, we're all going through it. And if we can provide a different perspective of it, or we're just getting some stuff off our chest too. We had some hard conversations, like some of those things about the beach and everything else. Like I thought about it, but I haven't. In a setting like what we put ourselves through now, you have to come up with an answer because you've got to speak. So I really enjoy it, and I enjoy podcasts at home when you'll feel like you're part of it. So I hope people feel a part of that too. But man, another good episode, mate. It's a beautiful Friday night. Now I've got to go probably change a dirty nappy, mate. So I will go and do that.
Sounds like a plan. This was a beautiful Friday arvo, and the next episode. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Stay tuned, baby. Give our website a plug, mate. Give it a plug, baby.
Check us out on the cleverdummies.podcast.com. Look us up on Google Podcasts. Check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Stitcher, everywhere. Just
everywhere, baby. Mate,
just search our name, you'll find us.
If you look, the Clever Dummies, mate, you'll see our ugly mugs, that's for sure. Brother, thank you so much. We have been the Clever Dummies podcast. Peace out.
Bye.